again, there's no point of diminishing marginal return here. You can count on things getting more robust and cheaper at a pretty aggressive clip over time. What are the category of things that people should be expecting over the next, K months?
So
Microsoft has made some bombshell announcements at the Build event. Sam Altman takes the stage to talk about the next big thing that's rolling out. They specifically don't use any numbers, but the message is crystal clear. This train is not stopping, and what's coming next will be bigger, better, faster, cheaper, and more intelligent. Also, remember Cognition Labs and Devin, the AI software engineer? Some of you thought that it was fake. It was debunked. Well, now it's joining forces with Microsoft. I told you this guy is not going anywhere. Here's a quick supercut of what I thought were the most important announcements at the Build event on day one.
I'm working with our partners at OpenAI to push that frontier forward. And like we showed this slide at the beginning, like there's this like really beautiful relationship right now between the sort of exponential progression of compute that we're applying to building the platform, to the capability and power of the platform that we get. And I just wanted to, sort of without mentioning numbers, which is sort of hard to do, to give you all an idea of the scaling of these systems. So in 2020, we built our first AI supercomputer for OpenAI. It's the supercomputing environment that trained GPT-3. And so
a picture of a great white shark.
Marine wildlife is our scale marker. So you can think of that system about as big as a shark. So the next system that we built, scale-wise, is about as big as an orca. And that is the system that we delivered in 2022 that trained GPT-4.
3 times the size of the shark.
The system that we have just deployed is, scale-wise, about as big as a whale relative to, the shark-sized supercomputer and this orca-sized supercomputer. And it turns out, you can build a whole hell of a lot of AI with a whale-sized supercomputer.
5 times the size of the orca.
One of the things that I just want everybody to really, really be thinking clearly about, and this is going to be our segue to talking with Sam, is the next sample is coming. So this whale-sized supercomputer is hard at work right now building the next set of capabilities that we're going to put into your hands so that you all can do the next round of amazing things with it. And so with that, I'd like to bring Sam Altman to the stage. You are one of the busiest people on the planet.
It's a wild week.
It's a wild week. It's a wild year, man. But so I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat with us today. So I guess what I really wanted to start our conversation about, and I asked you this question last week, is, there's just been an extraordinary amount of change over the past year and a half, year. What has been the thing that has surprised you most, particularly relevant to an audience of developers?
Yeah. I mean, I'm delighted to be here. Obviously, great to see you, but developers have been such a core part of what's been happening this last year and a half. There's millions of people building on the platform. What people are doing is totally amazing. And the speed of adoption and talent and figuring out what to build with all of this over what has really not been very long. When we put GPT-3 out in the API, some people thought it was cool, but it was narrow where the utility happened. And seeing what people have done with GPT-4 and seeing now what's happening with GPT-4, even though it's new and hasn't been out that long, is quite remarkable. I've never seen a technology get adopted so quickly in such a meaningful way. What people are building, how people are finding out how to do things that we never even thought of possible, which is why it's always great to have an API. That's been very cool to see.
Yeah, and I think, what you just said is one of the most important points to me. There's a version of AI that could have existed that is, a bunch of smart people building, things at extraordinary scale and then just building it into a bunch of products where everybody gets to passively use them. The really brilliant thing that you all have done is taken the exact same set of things and decided to make it available to any developer who's able to sign up for an API key.
Yeah, we try to be really thoughtful about what makes a good API for this. There's going to be all kinds of ways people can use this, but the more this can just be a layer that gets built into every product, every service, the better. And we've tried to make it such that if you want to add intelligence to whatever you're doing, any product, any service, we make that very easy.
Yeah, and again, I think the progress has been stunning. So, I think, the setup for introducing you onto the stage here was
I saw that big blue whale.
Yeah, like, you're making good use of the whale-sized computer right now. And so, like, I without, like, getting too specific, which we can't be, obviously, like, what are the category of things that people should be expecting over the next, K months?
So the most important thing, and this sounds like the most boring, obvious, trite thing I can say, but I think it's actually much deeper than it sounds. The most important thing is that the models are just going to get smarter, generally across the board. There'll be a lot of other things too, which we can talk about, but if you think about what happened from GPT-3 to 3.5 to 4, it just got smarter. And you could use it for all these things. It got a little more robust, it got much safer, both because the model got smarter and we put much more work into building the safety tools around it. It got more useful, but the underlying capability, this amazing emergent property of, like, we actually are seeming to increase the general capability of the model across the board, that's going to keep happening. And the jump that we have seen in the utility that a model can deliver with each of those half-step jumps in smartness, it's quite significant each time. So as we think about the next model and the next one, and the incredible things that developers are going to build with that, I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind. Also, speed and cost really matter to us. So with GPT-4o, we were able to bring the price down by half and double the speed. New modalities really matter. Voice mode has been actually a genuine surprise for me in how much I like the new voice mode. And when people start integrating that, I think that'll matter. But it's the overall intelligence that'll be coming that I think matters the most.
So you, for a while now, have been one of the most successful startup investors in the world. And like now you are one of the most successful CEOs of one of the most important companies in the world. So you've got a room full of developers here, like I think there are 5,000 people in the room and there are about 200,000 people online right now. What's your advice to them as like they think about how to spend their precious time given what's happening in the world? Like what's your advice?
Two things. Number one, this is probably the most exciting time to be building a product, doing a startup, whatever it is, that we have seen at least since the mobile boom and probably, I would say, since the internet. And maybe even bigger than that, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
But the big opportunities, the ability to sort of build something new and really kind of like change the landscape, that comes at the platform shift times. And we haven't had a platform shift in a while. And this looks like it's really truly a platform shift. And so my biggest piece of advice is like, this is a special time and take advantage of it. This is like not the time to delay what you were planning to do or wait for the next thing. Like, this is a special moment and a few years where a lot of stuff is going to happen and a lot of like great new things are going to get going. The second thing also about platform shifts is when the mobile phone revolution started or really got going, like 2008, 2009, you would see people say, we're a mobile company, we have a mobile app. And then only a few years later, no one said they were a mobile company because it was like table stakes. An amazing new technology, which I would bias, but we'll put AI in that category. It doesn't get you out of the hard work of building a great product or a great company or a great service. You still have to do it. AI alone is a new enabler, but it does not automatically break the rules of business. And so you can use this as like a new thing to do, but you still have to figure out how you're going to build enduring value in whatever you're doing. And it's easy to lose sight of that in the excitement of the gold rush.
Yeah. So one last thing before we let you go. So, you and I and like members of your team and members of the Microsoft team have been doing really an extraordinary volume of work over the past year and a half, 2 years, thinking about safe deployment of an awful lot of AI capability, like everything from, APIs and developer tools to end products. And, I think we, have accumulated a really interesting volume of experience that's sort of hard to get if you're not doing deployments at this scale. So and I think you just mentioned something that's like really, really interesting, like part of the interesting and surprising progression of capabilities of these models means that they're more useful in like helping to like make AI systems safer. So I don't know whether you had some thoughts you wanted to share there as well.
When we first developed this technology, we spent a lot of time talking about, all right, we've made this thing, it's cool. Are we ever going to be able to get it to an acceptable level of robustness and safety? And now we kind of take that for granted with GPT-4. If you use it, it's far from perfect. We have more work to do, but it is generally considered robust enough and safe enough for a wide variety of uses. And that took an enormous amount of work across both teams, and fundamental research. Like when we started this, we're like, we've got this thing, we've got this language model, it looks like kind of impressive and kind of not. And even then, how are we going to like get it aligned, and what does it need? What is it going to take to be able to deploy it? The number of different teams we've had to build up to go from research and creation of the model to safety systems, to figuring out policy, to how we do the monitoring, that's a huge amount of work, but it's necessary to be able to deploy these and use them. Like, when you take a medicine, you want to know it's going to be safe. When you use an AI model, you want to know it's going to be robust and behave the way you want, and have been super proud of the work the teams have done together. And I think it's amazing how fast this much work has happened, and that we can all now use this and say, oh yeah, it basically works. As the models get more powerful, there will be many new things we have to figure out as we move towards AGI. The level of complexity, and I think the new research that it'll take, will increase. I'm sure we'll do that together. But we view this as a gate on being able to put these things out into the world, which we really want to do.
Yeah, it's definitely table stakes. Is how we at Microsoft have been thinking about building applications on top of this incredible platform that is emerging right now. And so the
Words
challenge,
impossible,
I think,
difficult.
for us, and I think it's the same challenge that all of you face, is that you really want to focus on things that have made the transition from impossible to merely difficult. Like, that's where all the interesting stuff is. Like, if you look at the history of platform revolutions, like, that's where all the interesting companies emerge from. It's where all the innovation happens. It's where all of the value gets unlocked. And in the case of technology platforms that are sort of exponentially progressing, it's like the only reasonable place to go aim. Because if you're aiming somewhere different, like, the platform is becoming so much more capable and so much cheaper over time that everything that you sort of have in your imagination that's too expensive to do right now or too fragile is going to become cheap and robust before you can even blink your eye. And so, like, that is really, the thing more than anything else that I would say to all of you to take away from what I'm saying here today is, like, really focus on those phase transitions. So while you all have been out there, grinding away, building really extraordinary things over the past year with all of these AI tools that are coming, like, we've been hard at work trying to make forward progress on our AI platform. So, we talked a lot about how we're optimizing the current frontier, like making things cheaper and making them more powerful and complete. But we've also been hard at work building new supercomputing infrastructure. Another thing that I'm super excited about is the work that Cognition has been doing. So Scott and the Cognition team are also here with us today. We have just recently announced a partnership between Microsoft and Cognition. Their product, Devin, is like an absolutely amazing tool. So, like, if you can imagine for yourself, like, some of the most tedious things that you do as an engineer or software developer, Devin is a tool designed to help you with those tasks. Like, I can't even tell you all the number of times as an engineering leader or as an engineer that I've had to write code or lead teams writing code for doing things like replatforming and application. And, like, replatforming is like one of the laws of physics of, like, how we build software systems. Like, it's a thing that must be done, but, like, it's rare that an engineer really enjoys doing that. And so, like, the incredible work that Devin is doing on top of these incredibly powerful tools is just really extraordinary. And we're super excited to be partnering with them and to bring all of the power of what they're doing to Azure and having their systems and infrastructure run on Azure. So,
Devin gestures, bringing his hands together.
I really want to talk with you all today about just a couple of simple things. What's driving all of this progress? Like, why is all of this happening right now? And so part of it is, like, we're riding an extraordinary platform wave. Like, something is fundamentally changing in the universe of technology, much in the same way that it changed when we were going through the PC revolution, where Moore's Law was driving an incredible increase in the power and lowering of the cost of personal computing, which led to it becoming ubiquitous and something that we now all get to take for granted. Similar thing happened with the internet revolution, where networking technology connected all of this compute together and allowed us to do things that previously were unimaginable. And we're going through one of those major technological changes right now, being partly driven by a set of things that we'll talk about in a few minutes, just the incredible scaling of the capability of AI systems as you apply more compute and more data to training them. But before we get to that expansion of the frontier of the increase in those capabilities, a super important part of the emergence of a new powerful platform is sort of completing the stack. So it's actually hard work, even when you have a piece of technology that is improving at an exponential rate, to figure out how to do all of the things that have to be done in order to deploy it in real applications so that you can go out and deliver value to real customers who care about what it is that you're doing. And we've done a huge amount of work over the past year on the Copilot stack. It is both optimizing a bunch of systems so things are getting cheaper and more capable, and it's also building that whole cloud of capabilities and systems, services, and tools around the core AI platforms, the big models that you all need, and the choices that you all want so that you can build the things that matter to you under the constraints that you're operating under.
The entire Copilot stack is on the screen behind him.
One of the reasons that we have been able to do this is no other company has deployed more generative AI applications over the past year than Microsoft has. And so you have probably heard us over the past year talking about all of these different copilots, like this new software pattern that we originated with GitHub Copilot, where you pair powerful generative AI with this user interface paradigm where you're using the AI to help assist users with tasks. And so you can apply this to everything. And I know many of you in the audience are building your own copilots. So Microsoft itself is building copilots for service, for sales, a copilot in Bing, copilot in Edge, a copilot in Windows. And the reason that we've been able to do all of this work is because we have the copilot stack that we built for ourselves to help us have real agility in getting these products built quickly, to have them built efficiently where they're price and cost optimized, and to build them in a way where they're safe and secure. One of the things that you have heard from Rajesh and that you'll be hearing a lot more of at Build is part of what the Copilot stack is allowing us to do is to unify the experience across all of these copilots into one logical Microsoft Copilot, where you don't have to really pay attention to which Microsoft product or service you're in. The Copilot just understands all of your context and delivers all of the capability of the model in the context of your data and your tasks to you when you need it.
He clasps his hands.
So the other thing that is really driving progress is not just this sort of completion of the Copilot stack, this sort of progress that we're making in filling out that toolkit for you all so that it is easier for you to build software. But we are riding a fundamental wave in the development of this AI platform, where if you just sort of look at compute over time, how much GPU cycles or accelerator cycles that we're using to train the very biggest models in the world, since about 2012, that rate of increase in compute when applied to training has been increasing exponentially. And we are nowhere near the point of diminishing marginal returns on how powerful we can make AI models as we increase the scale of compute. So we're sort of doing two things at once at Microsoft. So we are optimizing the current frontier and building that toolkit to help you all leverage it, while at the same time investing at a pretty incredible rate in pushing the frontier forward. And so one of the super interesting things that has just happened as we're sort of pushing the frontier forward and really, really driving forward on efficiency is what our partners OpenAI launched last week in
Text, aka.ms/AOAI updates.
Earlier, GPT-4o is a really stunning achievement. A multimodal model that understands a bunch of different input types, from video to text to speech, that can respond in a bunch of rich ways, from text to speech and eventually video. It can respond to you, to the interactions for users in their applications in real time. And in the case of the ChatGPT demos that folks have seen, you can even interrupt the model so that you can have really fluid interactions with these systems. And then an enormous amount of work has gone into GPT-4o, both the model itself as well as the supporting infrastructure around it, to ensure that it's safe by design. So I wanted to also just remind folks, like, this efficiency point is real. So while we're off, building bigger supercomputers to get the next big models out and to deliver more and more capability to you, like, we're also grinding away on making the current generation of models much, much more efficient. So
Text, 12 times decrease in cost, 6 times increase in speed.
Quite a year and a half ago now, it's 12 times cheaper to make a call to GPT-4o than the original chat or the GPT-4 model. And it's also 6 times faster in terms of like time to first token response. So it's just really extraordinary, like, how much progress we're making because of like the full set of optimizations that we're doing, from the silicon that we're building, networks, data center optimization, as well as like an incredible amount of software work that we're doing on top of all of this hardware and infrastructure to really tune the performance of these systems. And the great thing is again, there's no point of diminishing marginal return here. And one of the messages that I want to land with you all today is that you can count on things getting more robust and cheaper at a pretty aggressive clip over time. So it's like a really important thing to internalize, like something, like we challenge ourselves on at Microsoft all the time, is like aim for things that are like really truly ambitious, because like all of this optimization work is going to accrue to make things like really ubiquitous in terms of like how you can go deploy them.
Devin grins.
A little quick demo video here. So let's roll the video, show you.
Hey, Microsoft Build Conference is tomorrow, and I have not been sleeping, and I am making stupid mistakes. Can you help me take a look at this code?
I'd be happy.
The woman
to help.
talks to her
Could
phone.
you tell me a bit more about the issue you're facing with the code? For example, are you getting an error message, or is the code not doing what you expect it to do?
Let me just show this to you.
She opens her phone's
It looks
camera.
like you're working on a Python function to summarize main points from a keynote.
What I'm trying to do is go through a list of keynoters and summarize all of their work. And my problem is that I wanted to just add Kevin's name to the end of the keynote list, and it added every character of his name instead of just his whole name. What did I do wrong here?
Change keynotelist.extend to keynotelist.append last keynote. This will add Kevin as a single element to your list, just like Satya and Rajesh.
Ooh.
The woman hooks up her phone camera to her laptop. She types on the
Sounds good.
laptop.
Give it a go and let me know how it works.
Okay, I replaced extend with append. Does that look right?
Yes, that looks better.
All right, I made that change. Let me run it and try.
Sounds good. Let's see how it goes.
It worked. Satya, Rajesh, and Kevin all came out.
Awesome. I'm glad it worked out. Sometimes the smallest things can trip us up, especially when we're sleep deprived.
Thank you.
The woman smiles at her phone. On stage, Kevin. He grins.
I mean, it really is extraordinary. So, like, I should say, by the way, that Jennifer would never make that actual mistake in writing a Python application, but Kevin might. So, like, this
He gestures to himself.
hope that a rusty old CTO might one day be able to program again if the need arose. But like, I do want to make sure that we're paying attention to like just how much has changed over the past year. I mean, like, what you just saw would have been absolutely inconceivable to think about actually working. And like, this was, not a tortured demo. Like, we were sort of looking for something to show off GPT-4o to you all last night, and Jennifer showed me this, and then she just recorded this demo. Like, this is just crazy that it works this well. So another set of things that have been really making a huge amount of progress is like what's possible with smaller models. So we have been working for a while on this series of models called Phi that are small language models. So Satya chatted a little bit about this in his keynote earlier.
Text,
And the way
Phi,
that we
Phi-3.
Imagine an efficient frontier. And so usually when you're building these models, you're trading a couple of things off. So you can trade size off, which is related to performance and cost and a whole bunch of other things, versus quality. So the smaller the model is, like the cheaper it is to do inference and like the less compute that you need to actually run the model. So small models are more amenable to running on devices. But it usually means that you have to take a hit on quality. And like what we're discovering in particular over the past year is that there's this notion of an efficient frontier. So we don't even show the GPT-4 point on this slide. It would be like way, way, way off to the right, just in terms of the size. So like if you want extreme levels of quality and performance, like a frontier model is your friend. But in some cases, like you may want to choose one of these other models somewhere else on this efficient frontier where the trade-off that you're making between cost to serve or latency or locality is acceptable given the quality that you can get. And the very interesting thing that's been happening over the past year is the quality that you're able to achieve in these small models is getting pretty high. So I just wanted to show this as an illustration. So like, remember back ancient history to the launch of ChatGPT in November of 2022. So ChatGPT launched on top of GPT-3.5. And so like everybody was just absolutely gobsmacked at what was possible with GPT-3.5. I mean, just this
GPT writes a limerick with Fermat's little theorem.
We fast forward a few months to March 2023, and ChatGPT gets an upgrade to GPT-4, which is even more extraordinary what it's able to do. Like you're able to ask extremely complicated questions of these things and get very rich, interesting, compelling completions. So fast forward to
GPT writes out ingredients for various recipes.
See that a version of Phi-3 optimized
on mobile
on a mobile phone can respond to a prompt just like ChatGPT could just a year or so ago with responses that are sort of equivalent. And like this is not arguing that Phi-3 that's running on this device is just as powerful as GPT-4. It is not. But the way that you all should be thinking about it is in many cases these models can be appropriate to use for building your applications when you have a particular set of constraints that you're trying to optimize towards. And so like all of this is kind of abstract in a way. And so I wanted to really motivate why this matters with the following example. So Satya mentioned earlier the partnership that Microsoft has formed with Khan Academy. And Khan Academy's mission is really interesting and important. Like they are trying to ensure that every learner on the planet, no matter where they are, has access to high quality individualized instruction. And so one of the things that we're exploring together with Khan Academy is the possibility of achieving that goal of ubiquity of these personalized learning agents by using something like Phi-3, where you can imagine training a Phi-3 model that's very good at something like math instruction. So this is an actual interaction with Phi-3 medium that has been fine-tuned to work particularly well for math tutoring. And the challenge with doing something like this,
the student chats a word math problem.
Not just have the model give the student an answer, but like you want it to lead them towards discovering the answer themselves. So like a tutor is very different from an answer agent. And so like it's just exciting to think about how many tools that organizations like Khan Academy have to solve like these really, really important missions that they have in the world. And so with that, I'd love to bring Sal Khan from Khan Academy onto the stage. One of the interesting things that happened when ChatGPT burst onto the scene a few years ago is that there was this reaction from a bunch of educators, and like I think it was actually a reasonable reaction where they're like, okay, we don't understand this, like we don't want our students using it, they're gonna like do things that we would prefer that they didn't do it. You, on the other hand, looked at this and said, this is amazing, and leaned all the way in. Can you explain a little bit about what drove your first reaction to this new technology?
Yeah, some of y'all know how Khan Academy got started. If you go almost 20 years ago, it started with me tutoring a cousin. I was a hedge fund analyst at the time. I tutor one cousin, word spreads in my family, free tutoring is going on. Before I know it, I'm tutoring 10, 15 cousins. And I start writing tools for them, software. I started making videos. That's what a lot of people know about Khan Academy. And if you think about that journey from then till now, even right before we started really working on generative AI, everything we've been doing is how could you scale that type of personalization that I was originally doing with my cousin Nadia. And we were approximating it with software and videos and teacher tools. But to some degree, we were going to asymptote on how far you could get with pre-generative AI tools. And then when we saw it, it was really GPT-4 that opened our mind. Greg and Sam from OpenAI showed it to us end of summer 2022. And we realized there's things that had to be worked out, but it could get that much closer to emulating what a real tutor would do. And it was obvious that, it could also be used as a cheating tool, and you have to worry about safety and privacy, especially with under 18 users. But I told the team, let's turn those into features, let's put the guardrails on it, because this could get us that much closer to our mission, which is free world-class education.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that you all have done, and this is a really important thing to internalize about these models and systems, is the model isn't a product, and the systems aren't silver bullets. You still actually have to understand who your customer is, what problem you're trying to solve, and how to go deal with a whole bunch of gnarly things on top of the this incredibly interesting and powerful tool, so you can do something useful. You want to talk a little bit about what you had to do there?
Yeah, and I have to admit, and maybe a lot of people in this room or in the world right now are experiencing this. Every now and then you see some of these demos and you're like, does my application even have relevance anymore? This thing's going to be able to do everything. But then when you sit down and you really think about how a school system, a teacher, a student's going to use it, and you're going to, what are the guardrails? What are the privacy? How do you make sure that it really does the tutoring interactions appropriately? It's aligned to standards. You realize that there's a lot to do at the application layer. Now, I think we're all discovering together this new world of developing applications on top of large language models. It's not deterministic in a traditional way. You have to have evals. You have to constantly test it. But we're realizing that there's just so much to do. It really is it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm especially excited about is this mission that you all have for Ubiquity, and the partnership that we're doing with you all is going to enable you to get get every teacher in the United States hands on Kamigo and your tools. And just a personal anecdote for me is my daughter is in the 9th grade. She's taken biochemistry and just in love with science in general. And she, on her own, without any prompting from dad, figured out how to use the free version of ChatGPT to take a bunch of biochem papers that were way, way, way more complicated than a 15-year-old by rights has to understand, dump them into ChatGPT and then just ask a million questions about it. And her learning acceleration, because she's figured out how to use this tool, is extraordinary. And I just want every kid in the world to have the same experience that my daughter has.
Absolutely. And what we realize at Khan Academy, there is a subset of students that if you give them the tool, and it sounds like you're lucky enough to have a daughter like that, they will run with it. But what you really need in most cases is you need caring adults, primarily teachers, in the room, motivating students, driving that usage. And so what we're really excited about this partnership, and this is a big deal. I want to make sure, we are using state-of-the-art models that use real compute. It has real cost associated with it. When we launched Kamigo, and which is still out there, and it's a tutor for students, it's a teaching assistant for teachers. But what we're launching today as part of this partnership is these state-of-the-art teacher tools we're going to be able to give free to every teacher in the United States so that they can get productivity improvements.
Yeah, big deal.
Big deal.